Okay, I am now recording. This is our last virtual chat available on Wednesday. There's going to be one other tomorrow, Thursday, which will be the official last chat. And I am looking at the information in the chat window, and I think I'm just going to start with any questions that are in there because there's something that is a surprise to me. So someone posted in the chat that if the journals for the group project are still required. Yes, they are. Because that feature was removed from the group area, yeah, they're still required. The reason I removed them from the group area was because the journal in the group feature tool, it would, if you post it in there, everyone within the group would be able to see the journal. It wasn't private or just directly to the instructor, which is what I thought it was. So I had to take it out of the group feature and actually turn it into an actual assignment so that you could submit it directly to me and it won't be out there for the people in your group, because some of the things that I'm asking you is about the people in your group. So you just need to get that information to me. And so to submit the journals 1 and 2, they are going to be due in week 6. And so you have links directly in week 6, if that makes sense. As I'm speaking, person who asked this question, and anyone else who's like, oh, okay, I get it. You can either unmute yourself and tell me I've answered your question, or you can type it in. But I'm gonna show you where those links are, and if my explanation makes sense, why I took it out of the tool that you have accessible to you and your group, because it shows your journals to everyone, and I don't want that. And so the journal entries for numbers 1 and 2, they're links. I'm inside week 6 right now, and yeah, there they are. So these, I had to create them as they were like actual assignments, so you can just submit them directly to me. So this is where you would submit those 2 journals. And those journals are not, not too hard to figure out what they're asking you to do, but understandably why I don't want it to go to everyone. And then the third one is where you recommend how people are evaluated or graded. And so that one is going to be a link in week 7. If you have questions, make sure you are posting them to everyone so that everyone can see them. So far, I only got that one question. I know a number of people took the option of using their extension vouchers for the essay, the critical essay. So this will be a time to ask any questions about that assignment too. And our last 3 assignments, the assignments are, yeah, a bit more challenging than you've been doing for the first part of the semester, but that tends to happen. So if there are any questions about the critical essay, this would be a good time to, we can, I think I might even put you into groups. Like I said, a number of people took the voucher extension as well as I. So if you saw my announcement, I too took the extension voucher. It's been a lovely, wonderful week that got away from me. So to that extent, if I don't have, are there any questions about what is posted in this week? Remember, you don't have to type. You can unmute and talk if you have that capability.
I do have one question. So on there, you have listed the I think it's like a practice test or maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, right down there. And then I think you have something for that in the last week as well. Is this just like a review test kind of thing, or?
You know, that is a good question. It is exactly what it is, what it says. Like, I try to give opportunities for people to do some additional work, and the bonus test is just one of those opportunities.
Oh, okay.
this, you don't, anything that's titled bonus is completely up to you. Those things are optional. And I don't add anything, any bonus points until I grade everything that was an actual assignment in the semester. So even the people who posted questions during the semester that I could use for this bonus test, yes, they will get some points, but they won't see those points until I evaluate everything, the actual work in the class. So I hope that answers your question. If not, ask me a clarifying one. So, and this is not something I'm going to make hard. I'm not interested in testing people for the sake of testing. I'm just like, hey, what can you say about these things now at the end of the semester? And it won't be, it's gonna, you have an hour to take it. And what I ask you will, even at like a reasonable pace, wouldn't take you an hour unless you just didn't look at anything in this course. That's the only way. If you decide to do the bonus test, it would take you an hour. But it's not going to be something that's like a final exam. And it is optional. So you can take it and do horribly. It doesn't, it doesn't count against you. Because the bonus points are different from like extra credit or like participation points. I do evaluate anything that's attached to bonus points. So you don't just automatically get it. The last point is I only have 75 bonus points to award during the semester. So if you were curious and you look at all the bonus point opportunities I gave you, it likely would add up to be more than 75, but the most I would give is 75. So I just try to give more opportunities to think about the content of the course. So that's my spiel on that. Thank you. Anybody else? If not, we will go. And I would love either today or tomorrow, if you log back in tomorrow, to answer any questions about the essay. The critical essay, I think, is the most difficult assignment. If you don't like writing about literature, or if you're not that kind of person, it is the hardest assignment. The other ones aren't so much. This is the critical essay asks you to, basically what it sounds like, unpack literature using a critical approach. So it's the most challenging. So if I don't get any questions, I'm going to break you out into some breakout rooms. I think I have enough people to get 2 breakout rooms here. One of the first things I'm going to have you talk about is going to focus on Octavia Butler, and we want you to bring to your small group discussion, like, what is it about that text that may or may not help you understand what speculative fiction is, and how, from your perspective, it fits in with any of the criteria of speculative fiction. For example, in the content that you had to look at about speculative fiction, it usually is controversial. It usually wants to push an audience. It usually is driven by things we deal with in our everyday real social lives. So speculative fiction, I mean, even if we look at something like, oh my gosh, I can't remember, the movie with Katniss in it, The Hunger Games. So something like that, would be considered in the genre of speculative fiction, because it really wants us to be uncomfortable in some kind of way as we think about how we live our lives in our worlds, even though the game of the world of the Hunger Games is very different from ours. So that's the first thing I just want you to talk about is Butler, speculative fiction. How does that text help you think about what speculative fiction does? And that might help us think about why speculative fiction is considered popular literature. So with that, I am going to try to put you into the breakout rooms. And then you have about 10 minutes because we don't have a bunch of time. And what I like for you to do is, as usual, try to give everyone some time to talk. And then when we come back to the larger group, ask for someone to give us a feedback from what you talked about in your small group. And then at least one other person add something as we bring the two groups back together as a whole. I'm gonna give 2 rooms, and you should see an invite in a second. And you should be able to see a timer when you're in there too. Might give you a little more than 10 minutes for this first one. All right, you should see an invite. Oh, I'm sorry I was muted. I've been talking to you and I was on mute. I said you should have seen the discussion question pop up in a couple of places. Yeah, I was trying to get into the right window, but we had 2 groups. So if I can have someone start from each group, and then at least one person, a secondary person, to help us have a conversation. What did you discuss?
I can start. I was in group 1, and we kind of talked a lot about we mostly were trying to think about what in the text Kindred connected with the what if of speculative fiction. So we kind of talked about how like the whole book itself was kind of a what if, and really the what if of like what if someone with like our like modern values or modern modern values, modern ideas and thoughts, at least in the context of 1976, like how that someone like that would engage with someone with thoughts and values of someone from the antebellum South, early 19th century. And so really the whole text is centered around that what if, at least that's what we were considering. But then there's also like lots of other little like what ifs throughout. And one of the ones that we brought up and I thought was interesting was when Rufus rapes Alice, and then Dana's having a conversation with him about that. She kind of comments like as the narrator in the book and says there's no there wasn't shame in raping a black woman, but there could be shame in loving one. So it was kind of like that was kind of addressing, and even throughout the book, as you could see like Rufus's and Alice's relationship, we kind of saw the what if someone from this time falls in love with someone they can't, like society says they shouldn't, and like what kind of tensions are there. I don't know. I thought that was interesting. So, yeah.
I am not going to try to dominate because thank you. That was a lot. And what I want to hear is from the other group or anyone else.
Yeah, I was from group 2. We kind of talked a lot about what Luke mentioned, kind of the what if our society still acted the same way they did back in the times of slavery. And then we also talked about kind of why do people like to read speculative fiction? Why does it fall into popular fiction? So we thought people kind of like to play with those what ifs and kind of use their imagination to figure out how our society may look different if if history took a different turn.
Okay, so we have two um, pretty decent size perspectives from the two groups to consider. Going back to, I think the first one, looking at, actually, I think they combined, because what I hear, and tell me if I'm hearing what the two reps from the group said, is that one, popular speculative fiction literature allows us sort of like this comfortable space to explore what ifs in our society, because it's kind of now, but it's set in like either a different time. As far as Butler's text is, we have two different times, right? We have like the antebellum South, that's our history before, our history during slavery time is antebellum South, but then we also have the 1970s. And for us reading it today, we get to look at two time periods where we could be okay with the discomfort, because it's not technically now when we're reading a book. So it allows us some comfortable, uncomfortable space to look at how our society at one point in time may have functioned. Or did I just make all that up?
No, that sounds right.
Okay. There are at least 4 other people. So what do you other 4 people have to say? You have to unmute yourself. This is as uncomfortable as it would be when we're actually in class and just silent. So help me out here. I'm like a dying comedian on the stage. Those other 4 people we had, and it's kind of hard. You're here because I can't remember everything that the first 2 folk talked about. I just can't hold all that in my brain.
So we kind of talked about too, like how people reading these books, like you said, it's a way for people to learn about like how society works and how it may change from in a more entertaining way, in a more comfortable way. We talked a little bit about that.
Okay, and the reason I said something about like it allows us to be comfortable was, I think it was Luke when he was talking about, you know, how Rufus, despite all of Dana's efforts to try to teach him to see the world a different way, she kind of just can't do that because he's surrounded by that particular world. But I mean, in the way in which we can talk about like the sexual, the assault on another person, which in this particular time is not even defined that way because of the social, you know, status of blacks and white and men and women in that time period. Like we can't even use what we understand now to talk about such a crime. Like it doesn't exist. And so it does kind of give us this space to be like, oh, let's explore this. And how has that changed? And maybe how does it look now? So the reason I picked that particular book is because unlike other speculative fiction, it takes us into a very different, like a different alternative world. I picked the time travel because the world is the same. The only thing that's different is the time period. And I thought that might push people get a little more sense of like how speculative fiction is trying to get us to see the world around us. And so, yeah, I had no idea. Just so you all know, I had no idea what would be going on in the world at the time I picked any of these texts. So I'm like, well, these are the reasons I picked this text. So I still have 3 other people. Can someone else chime in? I just wanted to bring up this definition so we have it in front of us. I can't stare at you like I would be in class and lean on you to make you talk. Well, let's go to the second thing we put out there was what makes this popular fiction. And I asked, how does Butler's text fit any of the criteria? And did you fit any of the criteria? And did you notice how this subgenre of fiction got even harder to define than where we started at the beginning of the semester? And yeah, that's pretty much the second discussion question was, how has this, if you look at, we started with horror and dark fantasy, and then we went to detective fiction, and now we're here. So going through those three genres, what is happening to your understanding and your ability to define what popular fiction is? So I'm going to send you back to a group, and that's the question. Thinking across the three genres, what has happened to your understanding of what pop fiction is? Is it getting harder, easier? What's going on? Just based on what we have. So that's the next question. And when we come back, hopefully we'll have different lead speakers, and then we can hear from the other three people we haven't heard from. So you should get a invitation in a second. Yes, so there I was talking again. I didn't unmute myself. Everyone's back now. Can I get a report out? I did not post that discussion question in the chat, but you were looking at the three genres that we've sort of read about this semester. So how has it gotten easier, harder, more fuzzy, less fuzzy? What you talk about?
In group 2, we talked about, like, as we read more of the genres, popular fiction seems to get harder, because what we thought of it before is just something that you like to read, but it's more than that, and there's like a lot of diverse kinds of histories, and popular fiction changes over time.
All right, the silence is someone from the other group or anyone chime in. Can you add that? What?
Our group, we didn't really, like, I guess, address like whether it got harder or easier, but we did talk about how popular fiction or popular literature seems to address relevant issues that have been like the forefront over the years. And I mean, I think that's been common in all the books that we've read so far. So
All right, this is one that I would might be grateful for if I could hear from the other four people. Just your take on where you are now.
Yeah, I mean, I was in group 1 as well, and I think I feel like my own perspective on popular literature, I mean, I feel like before taking a class like this, you kind of, like, I could probably read Kindred and understand that it's like making important points, but I think understanding some different ways of, like, I like take symbolism for example, so like understanding what symbolism is and how it's not just always one thing but can have multiple perspectives. I think it just kind of, in some ways, it like adds to the reading a bit, so it doesn't just make what you're reading like straightforward. It can make it sometimes like questionable, like in its exact meaning, which I think can sometimes like then speak to different people in different ways. So I think kind of that jumps on the fact that it seems to be relevant. So I mean, now, you know, before taking a class like this and understanding, like you can kind of understand the relevance, but understanding more of the specifics about how they make it relevant can kind of help you dive deeper into it.
Okay. I was trying to catch some of the things you were saying, and I just posted that in the chat. We only have about 4 minutes left, so if you're gonna log off before then, remember to post your parting thoughts, which I'm trying to capture here. So can we hear from the other people? I just brought this picture up on the screen just to show us like how speculative part of fiction where we are now compensates these other sort of areas. So anybody else, where are you now as far as, it doesn't matter if it's harder or just do you understand it more? What is it that you could say about popular fiction as we look at, the only one that's not on this screen on this in this area is detective fiction, but we see here speculative now is sort of like the overarching. 3 minutes.
I think
Can I hear from
I think now I have a better understanding of what popular fiction is, and now that it's more than one genre, it's not just kind of like a series of 2 or 3 books, but it's more than one set of books for all of popular fiction. It's not just a couple of.
Yeah, one of the things I heard, it's like the perspectives. So we kind of, and I saw us starting with like, okay, we can figure out what this is. You know, this is what a horror story does. These are the features. And Foster tells us like, oh, this, you can look at it and figure out literature. And we apply that to popular literature. And then we moved on to detective. I'm like, okay, so here's some other, you know, formulas and we can identify it. And then we moved to here and we're like, yep, don't know what's going on, but everything is going on. And how these things overlap. And also in the reading from Glover and McCracken, they also talk about one of the difficulties is that these popular fiction does not adhere to more like classical literature, like it has its own space. Popular fiction is going to combine genres, and that's what has become known as speculative fiction. So it's gonna create these different ways for us to interrogate our perspective about ourselves, our society. And I'm sorry if this ruined it for some of you, but yeah, we read popular fiction not just to have fun, but just to actually see worlds through different perspectives. That's my teacher lecture out. And I know I didn't hear from everyone, but I can't make you talk. Thank you for joining. I will stay on for a couple minutes after if anyone wants to linger and talk about any assignments, but I will stop the video for that part, which I'm stopping now.